I have everything pulled from the tub that I had in there during the mocked up setup. Stuffing tube, the motor, and the alignment stack. This is a top loading motor mount. Pull this rear split ring, 2 screws for the front split ring, comes straight out the top. Beautiful setup. While the stack was all put together, I've tack epoxied this short piece of brass tubing that stays in the tub, and I have the motor mount epoxied in. Just lay down a strip on the bottom of the motor mount. The brass tubes for the Sponson rods are epoxied in. Note the little bit of overhang here. Keep that clearance on the locking collars. Keep them from rubbing the paint on the side of the tub when the Sponson rods are flexing. I had this former that they include in there while I was epoxying the brass tubes in the tub. Keep this from pinching in. Got the holes drilled in the motor mount for the brass tube for the rear Sponson rod. A little bit different looking, but something I had to do to locate this longer motor in the original position of the stock motor mount. I've also slightly lowered the angle of the motor some more. Lengthen that slot, which I'll have to fill with a scrap piece of plywood. I'll also probably glass the bottom and on the inside with a fiberglass to reinforce that. That will be covered up with the bottom ski. It'll be fine. What this did for me was gave me a less steep of an angle on this bend on the stuffing tube, which I like. This is the builder's prerogative to be looking at changes like this. So I'm at 14.5 degrees. Just thought I'd share that. Be a little confusing, my series of builds, but yeah, something as a builder you should be looking at. Next up, I'm going to put a strip of fiberglass, be L-shaped strip of fiberglass on the outside of both motor mounts, and then lay a bead of epoxy on the inside. Here's the fiberglass I'm using, eBay purchase, 2-ounce fiberglass. I'll be doing that off camera. A lot of this stuff takes more time. Filming adds time, so we get that done off camera. Get the motor mount fully epoxied in, and that piece of stuffing tube. I am taping the inside of the side plate. Has the holes, that row of holes on the bottom. I want to get that epoxy flow in there. But this is going to involve probably 4 mixes and letting it cure in between each mix. So I'm taping the inside to lay the fiberglass on the outside of this motor plate, and I'll be probably leaving it in a 45-degree position for the cure. So I'm going to lay this fiberglass in here. I've taken this popsicle stick and modified the end of it just for this mix, the two mixes on the outside, so I can wet the cloth down, press it in place. I want to run enough epoxy in there to fill them holes. I don't want it running out this side. So just thought I'd share that with you. It's a little bit of a bugger. Get in here, wet the glass down. I'll be doing it with this stick, so off camera. Here's my tub propped up at 45 degrees on my building board. I'm on the second mix. This side, I already propped it up. It's cured. Epoxy's flowed into that corner and into them holes nicely. This is the side that's curing right now. You can see the epoxy flowed into the corner. Got the glass wetted out onto the floor, the plywood, and up the side of the motor mount. Kind of a hard place to get to epoxy and lay the fiberglass. Kind of tough to film, but that's the sequence. Be 4 mixes and 4 cures to final epoxy this motor mount in place. Here's a great example of how much epoxy I want on this motor mount. Nice uniform fillet of epoxy, just covering the holes. No bigger than that. That's plenty strong. Don't need the extra weight. Another nice fillet of epoxy laid in the corner, just covering the holes. Last mix, motor mount is in. Here's the best piece of advice I can give you. You make your mixes. This one's not cured yet. Your extra epoxy, leave it on the envelope or in your epoxy cup. Don't find places in your boat to put your extra epoxy mixed up. Oh, I can put a little extra in here. Go in this corner, strengthen this. Don't do it. Just adding weight. This part is done. Brass tube that stays in the tub. I've cut small pieces of wood, filled in the slot that I had to lengthen when I changed the angle of my motor mount. I have 1 layer of 2-ounce fiberglass, reinforcing that. Have the bead of epoxy going around this brass tube as I like it. Nice uniform bead of epoxy. I have fiberglass patch, 1 layer, 2-ounce fiberglass on the top here. Then I get to fussing. I have a piece of wood filling this hole in the former, and I have that epoxied in. Gives it better support, in my opinion. Neater job. So that's good to have all that done. As I was saying a few times earlier, that's the builder's prerogative to make changes as you go along. If you see something that's going to be better, make the change as you're going. That was that angle that I was changing. So there were several things I was looking at, because this motor that I'm using is on the high end of motor size to put in this rigger. So anytime you're modifying a kit from stock, you're going to be forced to make some changes and look at things. So I was keeping the position of the motor for CG and trying to maintain that stock angle, which lets me pass my stuffing tube through this former and through the laser cut slot in the bottom of the tub. I didn't like how steep that angle was. It makes the motor set up kind of high, that size motor, and that length motor in the tub, and I didn't like how steep Zippkits has their the bend in the stuffing tube, to be honest. My other riggers are at 12 degrees, so that's your prerogative. I had dropped it down, started with 18 degrees, dropped it down to 17 degrees, and then I was looking at it before I went to epoxy everything in, final epoxy, and decided I'm going to lower it some more. So a lot of gains there, more clearance on the cowling as far as the motor height, but as you lower it, you're raising the back of the this part of the tube. Is you drop that angle, this part of the tube is moving farther back in the tub, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that lengthened that slot. Then I have to deal with that. But now at this point, I'm real confident in what I have. I'm real happy. I've got the major part of the setup: motor, stuffing tube, the flex shaft, the strut. I know what I'm doing on the bottom ski. It's all figured out now. So could have went and framed the tub, sealed it. Looks like you're getting more progress faster. I'd rather work out all these details. Now I want to get that faster progress moving forward from this point. The other part of that is, and anybody that has builds knows this, for those of you that don't, you don't want to do epoxy on epoxy. If you do, because the oils float to the surface when epoxy cures, you have to sand it till it's not shiny. So this let me epoxy all these components, do the battery tray next when I go to seal the bottom, but this let me epoxy all the components in the boat right to wood, which is a stronger epoxy joint. Talk about this battery tray, yeah, I have to epoxy under it, seal it, and the bottom side of the tray and underneath it, I won't be able to access it. So I still haven't done that yet. I got all this other stuff done. So I will do that simultaneously. I'll seal underneath the tray, the bottom side, epoxy it in, seal everything up inside the tub. And then it'll be on to the next part of the build. Start to get fun here, be working on the top of the tub finally.